This presentation looks at using evidence to support claims. What is a claim? In research writing, a claim is a proposition you present to your audience that you would like them to believe and/or act upon. Here are some sample claims. People who make under $15,000 a year in the U.S. should be able to go to college for free. Eating fast foods is the main contributor to obesity in young children. Since genetically modified foods have been shown to be safe for humans, the government should simplify their regulation. Genetically modified foods should be labeled because consumers have a right to know what they are eating. Is a claim a fact? A claim is not the same thing as a fact because people can argue either for or against the claim. Let's look again at the claim eating fast foods is the main contributor to childhood obesity. The following two claims which go against this claim are counterclaims. Eating fast foods is not the main contributor to obesity in young children. Spending too much time in front of the TV and playing video games is the real problem. Or eating fast foods, watching too much TV, playing video games, and not getting enough exercise during the day all contribute to childhood obesity. Since a claim is not certain knowledge, authors must use evidence to support their claims. Various types of evidence can be used to support claims. Here are some of the types of evidence that you might use to support a claim that you make. One of the most common is facts. Facts are things that most people have come to believe are true and that can be checked and verified. For example, in some of the articles we've read, we've heard that food prices are at record highs. We've heard that the UN predicts 1 to 3 billion more people will be hungry will be born by mid-century, and that of 15.4 million farmers, 90% are poor. These are facts that can be checked. Empirical research involves facts that you have learned through actual research. So, for example, information that you collect from an interview might be considered empirical research. Observations that you make or write down could be empirical research. Surveys that are done can be empirical research. Think about Bittman, for example. He cites the Pew Research Survey. Fedorov discusses the report of the European Union's empirical research on genetically modified foods. Expert testimony is used when you quote somebody who is an expert to defend your point of view. For example, in healthcare and healthcare insurance, the government has quoted several experts on insurance to support its idea for healthcare reform. With analogies, you are making the claim that a situation is similar to another situation. So, for example, if you wanted to argue that genetically modified foods should be regulated, you might point out how the government did not regulate meats earlier in the century until packers began packing meat that was contaminated. Only when the government regulated the meat did meat packers pack meat safely. Shared values are also something you can use as a form of evidence. When you use shared values, you're looking to find connections to the audience that will help you to support your point. For example, Bittman applies to the shared value that the government should protect the environment. He assumes that you will agree with him on that. Fedorov believes in the shared value that we must help to feed hungry people in the world. When you use examples, you might take a specific example, a concrete example, to help audiences visualize a conceptual idea. So, for example, Bittman, when he says that the government favors profits over environment, uses the example that the government does not support labeling on GMOs. Therefore, it's supporting the company's desire for profits more than people's desire for safety. Personal experience is a form of evidence that can be used and can be powerful because it can reach out to emotions of the readers that you're working with. However, it can backfire as well. It's in some ways the weakest kind of evidence because you are relying on just a single case. And single cases are difficult to generalize from. So a single case where you talk about an individual who was damaged by eating a genetically modified food would not necessarily be a strong argument against genetically modified foods. One question you might ask is, what should I do with contrary evidence? Good researchers consider all the evidence when deciding what claims to make, even evidence that contradict their own claim. That's important because there are so many sides to an issue, and there are so many facts and examples and research that supports one side or another of your claim. Part of your job as a researcher is to think through all that you're reading and decide and weigh the evidence and look to what you believe to be the correct answer to your research question, given what the evidence that you've read says. Good writers also consider and answer counter-arguments. They don't just ignore what others say that might go against what they say. They think about it and they respond to it. So to support your claims well, use good evidence. Don't ignore contradictory evidence. Examine it and respond to it.